I'm going to do a demonstration on a simple coil building method. You're going to need a slab of clay, a fork for scoring, a cutting tool or needle tool, a sponge, some water for scoring, and then if you want to use slab coils, you need a roller and yellow bumpers for a medium slab. So first thing you can do is if you're doing just a basic rope coil method, you don't need to roll the slab out, but you do need to cut your slab up so you can get coils. So to do that, I just simply make a big cut. So I have a larger chunk of the clay, and I'm going to use my hands to push it into a clay log. Next one, I want to roll this out. So this needs to be round enough so I can roll. Try not to make any flat edges on it. I can roll with two hands, pushing from the middle towards the ends. I can roll with one hand if you find that easier. Find out what works for you. If you find it starting to jump like that, you can push it back into a round form and go back to rolling it. You're going to find you need the right amount of pressure. Too hard is going to make it flat. Too soft is also going to make it flat. You want to keep it round and rolling it consistently under your fingers. All right. You don't want to work with coils any larger than your thumb or smaller than your pinky. You want them, between your thumb and finger size. You need a coil to start the base if you're doing the rope coil method. So to do that, you have a long coil about the size of your finger, and you just spiral it in on itself. For this exercise, you want it to be about as big as a sponge. Any smaller is going to be difficult to get your hands inside of it when you're smoothing the edges in. So for the bottom piece, I'm going to just spin this around and smooth this over. This is kind of like using peanut butter on top of bread. You don't want to rip the bread, you want to just smooth out the peanut butter. So you need a firm but gentle touch. I did not slip and score this because I'm going to use good pressure on both sides, and that should be enough. All right, once I have one side smoothed out, this is going to be the bottom of my vessel. This is a good opportunity to get my name on there and my class identifier. Everyone's is going to look very similar, so you definitely want to do that so you can find yours easily. All right, you're going to flip that over. Now you have those coils showing on that side. You just do the same thing. Smooth that out so that they're all connected. As with any demo you see me do, I kind of rush it. You can take your time. Make sure that you're compressing this. By compressing, I mean, pressing it, pushing it to not have any cracks later when it's drying. You want a nice, flat, smooth piece to start with. If it's not perfectly round, don't worry about it. This is just a practice piece. I'm still grading this on craftsmanship, so make sure you're slipping and scoring nicely and putting it together. Okay, so I have my base. My initials are on one side. I have the top here. I'm going to start adding coils to make the walls of my vessel. I have two choices when it comes to this. One would be the traditional rope method. So that's when you actually roll all your coils out. You can do them one at a time, do them ahead of time, put them off to the side. I like to do them one at a time so they don't dry out. When I'm adding a coil onto this base, I'm going to make sure the coil is a little bit bigger than I need it. I'm going to overlap them to measure. I'm going to take my tool, and I usually do this with it facing towards me, but I'm showing you this way so you can see. I take my tool and I cut on an angle. So I overlap them and I cut at an angle. That way they fit together nicely, not straight up and down. It's a little bit of an easier seam to hide. So now that I have that, I take this puppy off. I smooth that so I make a ring. And then I'm going to slip and score so this attaches to the base. If it is fresh clay right out of the bag, you don't need as much water. If it is clay that's dried up a little bit from the wet box, you might want to use a little more water. In the beginning, you don't want to use too much water because it'll make the base of your vessel start to collapse. You definitely want to get some good score lines in there so this thing sticks together and doesn't fall apart. So once I have those both slipped and scored, I'm going to push down So it attaches just like you attached pieces to your slab. I'm attaching this coil to this bottom piece here. Pushing down, firm but gentle, and then I'm going to push a little bit of the clay all in the inner ring so that it makes a smooth contact from the bottom to the coil. I'm going to pick it up and show you, but you probably should do this with it actually on the table. Make sure you smooth each ring as you go up. It gets harder and harder to reach in here the taller you get. So I like to work on this as I go. I'm going to show you again facing you, but normally I do this a little off to the side or facing me, but I'm showing you in front of the camera. So I'm combining the coil with the base. I want to lose that seam. Firm but gentle pressure, making sure I'm not trapping air, and I'm connecting these two pieces. All right, now I have the beginning of my base. I can add a next coil. So for that, I'm going to once again squeeze that into that log shape. I don't want it too thin or too thick of a coil. I want it on the size of my finger. It's flattening out, so I'm going to push it back into round and roll this out. I want it to be long enough so that it can wrap around my vessel at least once. So once again, I wrap it around till it meets. I overlap it a little bit here. I take my cutting tool and I cut on an angle. Take those extra pieces away. That angle helps me hide the seam a little better. Make sure it fits. I connect this ring together. I go back to my slipping and scoring. The trick with coil building is not going too fast actually, because the base cannot be too wet. It needs to firm up as you build taller so that the bottom can sustain the weight of the top. So this is one project where you don't want to move too fast. You want to take your time and be as neat and consistent as possible, or all your work will be for nothing. It'll start to sag. So it's a little hard to show you because I'm blocking it, but my left hand, because I'm right-handed, is supporting this pot right here, the vessel, and my finger is smoothing down the coil to the coil below it. So I never just push without support, because then I'll start to get like a bowl shape. You don't want that. You want to try to make this straight up and down as best you can. It's harder to do that. So in the beginning, you want to try to keep it as cylindrical as possible, especially with this exercise. So same thing, I'm smoothing over these two coils. I don't want to see the seam. Smooth, smooth, smooth. All right. Same thing on the inside. And I do it every time as I go up, because like I said, it's going to get harder to reach down in here and make it neat. In the beginning, it does look a little messy. Once I get a few more coils on here, I can start to smooth this out a little better. So it's pretty much the same thing over and over again. I try to build this as high as I can get it. But once again, if I build too fast, too quickly, it will start to be unsupportive. It'll start to bow out because this is too wet. So I actually want the time for this to start to dry up. So I'm going to take my time. I'm going to go around and smooth these edges as I go. And I'm just going to keep building to get as high as I can in the amount of time I give you. If you do not like this rope coil method, there is another method where you can use a slab. So just like you know how to roll out a slab, I try to make my slab begin as a longer piece because you're actually going to be making coils out of this. I'm using the yellow bumpers because I want a medium thickness slab. And I'm going to roll this out. I normally stand when I roll. It gives me a little more strength. I'm going to show you like this so that you can see in the camera. All right. I'm rolling a nice flat slab. I'm going to use my bumper as a template. So I want my coils to be about as thick as this bumper. So I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to cut along the edges of this bumper. And I want my cuts to be perpendicular. I'm sorry, I want my cuts to be parallel. I want a nice straight coil. It'll help make my pot, my vessel nice and straight when I'm building. All right, so now I have a couple slab coils instead of the rope coils. I do think if you're having trouble rolling a coil, this is definitely a better method for you. Especially if you want a neater piece, it will make it a lot neater quicker instead of trying to figure out how to roll a better coil. All right, so I have my slab coils. If I'm doing this technique, I could have rolled my slab out and made the base like that, or you could still try the rope coil base. It's up to you. I wouldn't use the spiral method to make the base with these. I would either just roll out a slab, cut a circle, or use the coil method. So once again, same thing. I'm going to make sure my piece is big enough. I'm going to overlap it slightly here, and then I'm going to cut on an angle again, just like I did with the rope coils. I just think it makes a lot neater of a joint. I also don't want to always put this cut in the same spot every time I build the coil. So my next coil, when I put it on, if it's joined there, I'm going to try to join it over here so I don't have one weak spot on my whole vessel. All right, once I join these little two pieces together, I have another ring. And so this is the slab coil method. I still have to slip and score. Both pieces. Using the correct amount of water. I don't need a lot of water. If it's new clay, if it's older clay, I do need some more water as it dries up. I'm going to put this on here. And it's going to be the same thing. I'm going to take my time and smooth over all those edges. Making sure it's smooth over on the inside. I'm using my hand to support. I saw some people use like this. Once as it gets taller, you can use a stick or something to support the inside. Maybe even here, you can use something. You can use the sponge if you feel like that's going to work for you. You can use one of your tools to smooth those over. Whatever you feel comfortable with. Your goal is to use as many coils as you can to get high. For this exercise, try to get it as high as you can in the amount of time that I'm giving you. You don't want it to start to flare out. You don't want it to go too far in. If it does, that's okay. You can purposely do that by putting the coils more towards the outside or more towards the inside, and that'll change the shape of your vessel. But for this, I really just want something straight up and down, just a cylinder. Try to get as high as you can. Use your coils. Try to make this as neat as possible. You don't want a ton of bumps, and I don't want to see any seams. Some coil projects, you want to keep the coils. You can show them, and you have to smooth one side. For this, I want you to try smoothing both sides. So it's that firm but gentle pressure. And just keep going up. So you're going to bring your next coil, overlap it. This time, with the slab coils, you overlap in front of each other. Remember, you cut on that angle. Get rid of your extra stuff. Put that together. You're going to slip and score. And then put that one on and put it all together. All right, I think you got the gist of it. Try to get as high as you can the amount of time I give you. If you have any questions, of course, ask. Have fun.